Hello and welcome to the Aunty Lisa show. In today's show we have, all of us, a Martian, a Poo, who put that in there, a shipwreck, Dashi and a forklift. I don't know why I do this to myself. Right, let's see. One day, Aunty Lisa, Aleksander and Kristoffer decided to go for a nice walk. It was a very lovely walk along the beach. And all of a sudden, they came across the most peculiar and stinky thing. Nope, it wasn't a beached whale. Wasn't a bemused shark. It was the most ginormous poo. And when I say ginormous, I mean ginormous. It was the size of your car. Yes, it was the size of a large car. That's how big it was. It was so big, in fact, that at first, Aunty Lisa, Aleksander and Kristoffer just thought that it was a large rock. And they thought, that's funny. That rock didn't used to be there. But as soon as they got close enough, they could smell it. And it was stinky. It was like the smell of the worst poo you can think of, which is a combination, by the way, of cat poo and skunk poo and gug poo. That's the worst poo you can think of, or at least that I can think of right now. Anyway, they couldn't believe their eyes. Aleksander and Kristoffer were like, Aunty Lisa, where did that giant poo come from? We wanted to go paddling. We're not going to go paddling now. Aunty Lisa went, oh, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's horrific. We need to find out what is going on. Who could have done such a ginormous poo on the beach and not cleaned it up? It's very, very, very naughty to do that. You're supposed to clean things up like that. In a ginormous bag. They would have had to have a bag the size of a skip. Anyway, so they decided to call up some of their seafaring friends. And they called up the Octonauts. And Dashi answered the call because she happened to be in the control room of the octopod, which I think is probably called the control room, but might have a different name. And Dashi said, oh my gosh, you guys, you found what? And Aleksander and Kristoffer, who were smart and had called up on their iPads, showed her exactly what they were on about. They flipped around the screen on those iPads and she went, oh my goodness, who could have done a poo that big? That's disgusting. Quick, I'm going to get all the other Octonauts. Come and have a look on the screen. So all the other Octonauts appeared on their iPads like, ooh. They had no idea. Had it washed up, perhaps? Or had it landed from the sky? Nobody could figure it out. But they wanted to investigate. So, the octopod sent out one of its little boat thingies with Dashi and one other Octonaut. Let's have Captain Barnacles, because he loves to find out about a good poo. Anyway, so they came out, they whizzed out and came to shore right next to Aleksander and Kristoffer and Aunty Lisa. And they said, hello, ahoy, ahoy. Oh my goodness, said Captain Barnacles. That is the most disgusting poo I've ever smelt. Oh dear. Has anyone got a mask? I need a mask. Oh. He put on his scuba diving mask. Smart cookie. Didn't have to breathe in the poo smell. Anyway, so he said, I have no idea what this could possibly be from. Did you happen to see if there were any footprints around, maybe? Aleksander and Kristoffer said, no, we didn't investigate that far yet. Dashi said, quick, I'm going to get some photos. Let's get some good shots of the GINORMOUS Poo, and we'll send them around to see if anybody else knows what it could have been from. So everybody stood up in front of the poo for size comparison, like this, all in a line. And Dashi took some brilliant photos of the GINORMOUS stinky poo. Then they took some samples of the GINORMOUS stinky poo to take back to the lab to find out what it was in it, like what could possibly have been what it's been eating to make such a GINORMOUS poo. Now Kristoffer at this point said, hey, what if it's a dinosaur? Let's go and see if we can find any dinosaur footprints. Aleksander said, that's a brilliant idea, bro. High five. And gave him a high five. Aunty Lisa said, yes, good plan. Let's investigate. They could be really far apart, these footprints. It must be a giant thing that's made this enormous poo. Well, they walked and walked and walked and walked and walked and walked and walked along the beach. But they could not find any footprints. What? Very strange indeed. So then they came back on themselves and walked and walked and walked along the beach in the other direction, just to be on the safe side, just to check. And they could not find any footprints. But then a strange thing happened. In the distance, out at sea, they saw the most enormous splash. Even bigger than if a blue whale had jumped out of the water, which I don't know if they can do, probably not, they're a bit big. Anyway, jumped out of the water and done a belly flop. And they were like, whoa, did you see that? What is it? What? Well, they looked up in the sky and they spotted something going, vroom. They said, hang on a minute. What on earth is going on? Dashi said, I will check with the octonauts. Maybe they know what's just landed in the sea. It's got to be something really big. Well, they called through to the octopod. And on the octopod was Peso. And he answered. And he said, oh my gosh, you guys, I have just seen the most enormous scary monster land in the sea in front of us. And everyone went, what? An enormous scary monster? What does it look like? And he said, oh, well, it's green. Really, really, really green. It looks like, a cross between if a T-Rex had a baby with a pteranodon and then they took some crazy radiation medicine and started glowing in the dark. That's what it looks like. Aleksander and Kristoffer were like, whoa, we've got to see this. Aunty Lisa said, not a chance. That sounds dangerous. Does it have big teeth, Peso? Peso said, yes, it certainly does. It's absolutely blinking terrifying. We are getting out of here. Well, the octopod, fast as it could move, which is not very fast, zoomed to the nearest harbour and Dr. Shaw and all of the octonauts ran out. And they started screaming and yelling to everybody that there was a monster in the sea. Now, Aunty Lisa was scratching her head. She said, well, We are quite used to seeing dinosaurs sometimes. I mean, you know what that Andy's like. He goes back in time and he lets one out by mistake. And of course, there's Jurassic World. Sometimes a dinosaur escapes. But I have never, no, never, ever, ever have I ever seen a T-Rex mixed with a pteranodon that glows in the dark. This is something quite peculiar. And did anybody else see what zoomed away from the sky? Well, everybody was scratching their heads. Aleksander and Kristoffer looked at each other and they said, aliens. Aunty Lisa said, oh no, not aliens. I bet you're right. It's aliens, isn't it? But why? Why do a ginormous poo and leave it on the beach? I mean, that's untidy and unsanitary. And why then dump your alien monster in the sea? It's all gone bizarre around here. Now, meanwhile, the local news had got hold of this and lots of cameras started coming down and lots of scientists and also somebody smart with a forklift to get rid of the ginormous, disgustingest, stinkiest poo in the world ever. Which, by the way, is not an easy task because the forks on the forklift were completely insufficient for lifting the poo because it just went over the edges. So they rethought that and got themselves a giant, enormous, one of them bulldozers, you know, with the scoop on the front. It's not a bulldozer. Digger? One of those. I haven't talked about those in a long time. Anyway, so whilst all that was going on, obviously the local bosses of the town, the mayor and things like that, they were out trying to get rid of the enormous poo and trying to figure out what was going on. And they started interviewing everybody who'd been on the beach, which was, of course, Aunty Lisa, Aleksander and Kristoffer, who explained to all the news cameras what they had seen. And everybody there was like, aliens? Oh my goodness, this is the biggest story that has ever been. It looks like a T-Rex crossed with a pteranodon that glows in the dark. Oh no, this is a nightmare. Aunty Lisa agreed this was indeed a nightmare and they needed more help. So, who could they call upon to help with a ginormous, enormous monster that looked like a cross between a T-Rex and a pteranodon that glows in the dark? They thought long and hard for a minute and then they thought, maybe Owen? I mean, he's used to dealing with dinosaurs. And then they thought, I hope whatever it is hasn't drowned. Just as they were wondering if indeed the monster might have drowned, what appeared out of the sea but the giant T-Rex head of the giant T-Rex pteranodon cross. And it was angry. And it went, and it staggered up onto the beach. And everyone went, ah! And they all ran away. And the giant T-Rex pteranodon that glows in the dark, which I'm now going to call a T-Rexodon, because I can, because I invented it. The T-Rexodon, the glow-in-the-dark T-Rexodon, sat down on the beach and sulked because he had just fallen out of, well, I will tell you, a spaceship, which was not a nice way to have to deal with the day. And earlier that day, he'd had a funny tummy and they'd made him poo overboard of the spaceship. And he wasn't at all happy about it. And now he comes to land, he finds a ginormous poo, which is his. He's not happy about seeing that again. That was an unhappy memory. And everybody's running away. And he doesn't understand. Now, once everyone had reached a safe space, which was on top of a cliff. They all peered down, at least what they hoped was safe. Of course, this thing's got wings. Anyway, so they all peered down and they looked, and Aunty Lisa said, "Oh, he looks sad. I wonder what's wrong." Just as she was thinking that, a ginormous flying saucer appeared above her. And everybody went, "Ooh!" and hoped that no one would get sucked aboard, because that's what can happen with flying saucers. And the flying saucer set down on the ground. And everyone went, "Ooh!" They hoped that no one was going to get kidnapped by whatever was on the flying saucer. Everyone assumes aliens will do that. And then the door opened on the flying saucer. And out came quite a small, maybe the size of a dog. That's not very helpful, is it? Because dogs vary in size. It was the size of, well, it was a bit smaller than Kristoffer. That size. Anyway, out came a tiny green person with antennae, of course. The big eyes. And everyone went, "Ah! Run away!" And they all started running away. As they were running away, the tiny green person went, "Hey, stop! Stop! Come back!" Aunty Lisa said, "Did that tiny green person just talk to us?" And Aleksander and Kristoffer went, "I don't care! We're running away! Run, 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 run." And the tiny green person went, "Hey, stop! Come back!" And they went, that tiny green person did just say something. Dashi, of course, was so excited she hadn't run away at all. She was just taking photos. Captain Barnacles was going, "Dashi, Dashi, come back. You're going to get abducted by an alien. They might do experiments on you." Dashi went, Oh, I was busy taking photos." She had taken a lot of photos that day. A lot of photos. As you would on a day like that. It was a big day. Anyway, the little person started talking to Dashi, and Dashi said, "Hi, my name is Dashi. What's yours?" And the little person said, "Oh, my name is Griselda." That's right. My name is Griselda, and I am from the planet Mars. And I have lost my pet. And Dashi said, "Your pet?" Griselda said, "Yes, my wonderful, gorgeous, giant pet. I love him so much, but he has such a funny tummy. I made him poop out the side of the spaceship. And then he fell out later on, and it was a nightmare. I've been so worried. I've been searching all over, but I thought eventually I'm just going to have to stop and ask somebody if they've seen him, because that's what you have to do when you've lost something." And Dashi said, "Okay, hold on a minute. Let me just ask Aunty Lisa something. Aunty Lisa, do you think this could be her pet?" Aunty Lisa said, "Oh, it wouldn't surprise me." And Dashi said, "So, what does your pet look like?" And Griselda, the Martian, said, "Well, my pet has the most cute, ginormous teeth and the most adorable, ginormous claws and the most loveliest, ginormous wings. And it's the most beautifulest colour of green, and you can't lose him normally because he glows in the dark. It's very handy." Dashi said, "I think we know where your pet is. But please can we ask you that in future you pick up the poo that you leave behind." It's very untidy to leave poo on the beach. Griselda said, I'm sorry about that. I just didn't have a bag big enough. Dashi said, I understand. Not to worry. Let's take you back to your lovely pet. What's your pet's name? And Griselda said, well, he's a type of thing called a T-Rexodon, but his name is George. And Dashi said, what a lovely name. Now, meanwhile, Aleksander and Kristoffer had peered over the cliff to check where the T-Rexodon was. And the T-Rexodon was in a sorry state, sitting on the beach still, crying. And they said, he's over here. Well, Griselda was over the moon delighted, and she ran down onto the beach and gave her T-Rexodon George the most enormous cuddle. And George perked right up. He jumped onto his feet and he leapt into the air like... He didn't fly brilliantly, but he did fly a bit because he'd had a really bad day and a funny tummy. And Griselda said, hey, thank you so much for finding my lovely George. I was so worried about him when he fell in the sea. I just didn't know what to do. So everybody said, that's okay. Now, George and Griselda went back inside their spaceship. And they said, hey, would anybody like to take a ride with us? Well, who do you think put their hand up first? Aleksander and Kristoffer. And Aunty Lisa said, okay. And so, Aleksander, Kristoffer, Aunty Lisa, Dashi, and that was it, all went for a zoom around the world in the spaceship. And Dashi took loads of cool photos. And do you know what Griselda's favourite food was? It was cake! Aunty Lisa was beside herself. And you know what she showed Griselda? She happened to have with her a thermos of tea. And she shared that with Griselda. And Griselda was like, wow, tea is amazing. Anyway, by and by they travelled round the whole world. And it was time to go home. So Griselda dropped them off back at home, and Dashi had so many photos that they spent the whole of the rest of the evening showing the whole world all the amazing photos that they'd just taken. And then Griselda said bye-bye, and off she went with George the T-Rexodon back on their own trips into space. And that is the end of the story. I love you. Night night.